Zhu Min, National Institute of Financial Research President, is formerly Deputy Managing Director of the IMF and also served as Vice Governor of China's Central Bank. I discussed with him on the sideline of the World Economic Forum the latest situation with the Chinese economy and what does it mean the slowdown in GDP numbers and about the health, particularly, of the economy today in China. Governor Zhu, what a pleasure to see you at the World Economic Forum.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you because I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
Phase 1 trade deal signed between China and the United States. How sustainable will this truce, as some say?
I think it should be a sustainable deal. I mean, because it's clearly on the U.S. side, I think the U.S. need a deal because it's a help to U.S. And agro products to exports and also for the manufacturing things. And I think that's also important for the U.S. So in that sense, I think Trump should stick on the deal. On the China side, actually, China will import those goods to meet the domestic demand. And also China committed to the further reform in terms of financial market opening and in terms of more broadly protection of IP and improve the business environments, which is also important for China because when China moving from $10,000 per capita income to the high income, in that time, open up, introduce international competition is really the key.
But you know, Governor Zhu, many are suggesting whether some of the content we have seen in the deal, because we need to read them line by line, right? Many of the industries are doing so right now, actually appear elsewhere in other Chinese documents anyway earlier. So is there much China really committed, some ask?
Indeed, China committed. For example, China committed to the IP protections in the G20 and also within domestic the documents in many ways. China committed to improve the business environment in many ways. So all those things, the reason I feel confident, I think both will stick on the deal, because particularly from China's side, it's just good for China, good for Chinese economies in the future. So I think, so that's the reason I think the deal is sustainable.
But what about the financial sector? I mean, many of the things listed in the document actually were earlier commitments China already made for the years to come.
Right, that's true. I mean, really, if you're looking for the whole thing, in the deal, we agreed to broadly open China's financial sector, in not only banking sector, but equity market, security companies, funds, ratings,
and
the third-party payments, and all those things. Which actually, for example, President Xi Jinping announced in Boao is April 2018 already. And since then, we also observe many open door policies in those things. So as I said, this is really important and good for Chinese economy and move forward. So I think China will very much stick on this commitment.
$200 billion purchase would not be much problem for China over the next 2 years?
Yeah, because there's a clear definition. Say it's 200 billion, but also have to be a competitive price. So that means the market is important. And also have to meet China's domestic market need. So U.S. cannot dumping anything to China. I think is make very clear. Which obviously this term is a key issue for both sides and negotiated for quite long. But at the end, the U.S. accept the China language. I think China standard, because obviously you want to export, so you have to basis on the market competitiveness, right? So in that sense, we import more from the U.S. Actually, is import things to meet the Chinese domestic need. So it's good for both.
But still, $360 billion Chinese export to the United States being tariffed. Now, many wonder, once the Phase 1 deal is signed, what about that part? At least from Chinese perspective, what about that part?
We very much hope the U.S. will gradually cutting the tariff against the Chinese goods. In the deal, there's one sense the tariff can only go down but not go up. I think that's a very important sentence. So in that sense, we can expect to see the tariff gradually cutting down.
But as you may know, in the political year of the election, a lot of things are very vulnerable in terms of the U.S. ambience. And therefore, plus a leadership that sometimes could be described as unpredictable, how much people really wonder, even here at the World Economic Forum, about the U.S. capability to fulfill its promises?
So far, what you hear from the U.S. side, from Lighthizer, from Trump, are they all committed so those deals because they feel this deal is good for U.S. and good for China and good for the whole world. So I hope U.S. will be able to keep the deals.
Of course, U.S.-China relations, economic-wise, is one thing that is having an impact on the Chinese economy, particularly when it comes to the atmosphere. However, what is going on in the real Chinese economy is a very, very important issue. 6.1% Governor Zhu growth rate. I'm not saying growth rate lower, it will be worse, but rather if it is with great quality. So what do you think about the warnings both the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang gave out earlier about so-called difficult times, hardships? Does it mean Chinese economy are going to go further downward and huge pressure?
I think growth will slow down, but policy and improve more balanced. I think that's the key issue, right? We also did studies. What we see, and when China moving into this stage, China moving to more service sector. So improve the service sector productivity become really important, which will require more reform, open door policies and technology policies. With all those policy support, China will be able to stabilize the economy in some degree. So not necessarily will sort of everybody think growth will dramatically slow down. I don't think so. And internationally, there are a lot of uncertainties. So in that sense, I really don't think we need to focus too much on the number of growth. We need to focus on the quality, make sure the growth is much more balanced, and make sure the growth is in line with international trends. You think about that, and the whole world have a 2.9% growth rate, the lowest one since 2008, right? And this year, the growth and also be moderate in around 3.1. So in that environment, the Chinese growth rate around 6% is very reasonable.
But some suggest the 6.5%, that was where the economy was 2018. Now from then, that was the slowest growth rate since the 1990s, when you look at the speed. And now everything going downward, if you look at the numbers, I'm saying. So how would we guarantee the quality?
With international comparisons, we realize when you have a big economy, your growth is tend to slow down. So any minute you will say, hey, China has the lowest growth rates. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's much bigger. And incremental part is also much, much bigger, even with low growth rates, right?
Every year there's a growth of the, the quantity of Australia or the quantity of Indonesia.
No, it's a huge economy. So I think number per se is really nothing. But the quality, the quality means many things. In one end, environmental protection is obviously good quality. I think if you're looking for Beijing air quality, is much better. Income inequality, and also to make sure the pensions, the Medicare assistance more equal, more fair, cover broadly by the people, make people happy. I think that's a quality which currently China is doing now. I think that's very important. And also people have a choice to pick the much quality goods they need when they become the middle income country to the high income middle class, have more money to spend. So open door for importer, China first one to build import exhibitions. I think those things make people happy. Job number is extremely important.
Let's talk about the job numbers. What have you noticed so far?
Well, I think the job number continue to improve because everyone in China have roughly 12 million people, to get into the jobs, which is absolutely amazing. So I think in that time, I expect to see China will continue to able to provide 12 million jobs in roughly year 2020. So job number is important. If you talk the air qualities, you think of the job numbers, people's social security baskets, people's happiness to enjoy more variety of the consumption goods. In that sense, and I think behind the whole thing, this economic structure has been reshaping and shifting toward more balanced things, less investments, less import. I think in that sense, I would say the quality is indeed improving.
But what about the quality? One of the things is state-owned sector vis-a-vis private sector. That has been an issue covered so much in the international press. So what about that? Where is China now?
I think SOE reform is the key issues on the agenda of government reform plans. SOE reforms mean many things. The first issue is make SOE active and the basis on the competitiveness rules and the field. I think that's one thing. Actually, this is one thing we experience in Davos. You can hear many Chinese SOE talk about their competing with anyone in the field, right? It's nothing preferential policy toward a particular them. Mixed ownership is another issue, so we try to bring the private sectors, invest in the SOEs to make sure it's changing the ownership structure, changing the governance issues is second issue. And also keep the neutrality is a very important issue to maintain a fair business environment. I think that's also a big issue for 2020.
What does that mean, keep the neutrality?
Neutrality means that everybody is equal, fair-footed in the competition in the market, no preferential policy toward some particular parties. So I think that's the key issues I will expect to see in the SOE reform, which is also important for China's growth in the next decade.
But the debt issue for the private sector, particularly now, we have seen it being a big concern for the country's economy.
That is a big issue, particularly corporate debt is way high compared with international norms, I think, in the SOEs in the private sectors. But good news, the debt has been stabilized. Actually, SOE debt ratio has been cutting roughly 4.5% in the past 2 years. Stabilization of leverage ratio, I think that's the most important thing.
What about for the private sector?
On the private sector, there's also in the private sector, the debt ratio is on downside. So clearly, I think we see the corporate sector deleveraging really move fast, which is a good sense.
Governor Zhu, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.